Hey, I'm Peter Johnston, and today I'm going to be talking about the 2020 census and a local conversation that occurred yesterday about why this census is so much more important than all the other ones that have happened recently and all the implications that are going to be held therein. All right, let's get started. Okay, first, just to provide some background. The census circulates every decade, but the reason this one has garnered so much public attention recently is because the Trump administration has added a new question, and it's about citizenship. Now, advocacy groups and states are fighting against this for various reasons, but my biggest question for them, the panelists, was what's the big deal? What's going on here for refugees and migrants in particular? The main point that they brought up was that refugees and migrants fear that their government is going to use these answers against them. And they're not without a base, these claims, because the Trump administration has definitely scaled up the use of ICE in recent years, and people have genuine fears about this because they come from war-torn third world countries that have employed such mechanisms against them in the past. So, oftentimes, a lot of these refugees and migrants have expressed that they don't want to answer the question. Now, the problem with that is that there is no such thing as an incomplete census that's allowed to pass. Every single question needs to be finished. Otherwise, you get a suited man walking up to your door, reminding you of a potential ICE officer or a potential government official who's going to be using that information against you when actually they just want you to finish the information. All right, now what's the big deal for everybody else? States get federal funding based on the results of the census. So this is what this looks like. Utah, if it's found to have more people in need of Medicaid, will probably get more funds for Medicaid. There's other programs too. There's education. There's just plenty of agencies that are funded by the federal government, including the Department of Workforce Services. But it's not just the federal government that we've got to worry about. Businesses make decisions partly based on the census when considering where to put their facilities. So Utah's demographics could play a large part in determining whether big companies are going to place their facilities here. But so do refugee resettlement agencies and other nonprofits use the data. It's ubiquitous and it's accessible by everyone. Now, the main point about this is that with this new question and with the widespread fear of refugees and migrants, and it's very well founded that the government would use this information against them, and advocacy groups standing by these refugees and migrants and saying that they're not going to answer the question in solidarity with them, the state infrastructure stands to suffer, and research projects would be largely stilted and different based on this changed information, this demographic information. So I also want to focus on a question that Nat Nelson brought up in this meeting with the panelists. He asked how this census is going to affect legislative redistricting in Utah, and it's a great one. Really quick, the party in power always determines, at least this is the president, the party in power will always determine the federal and state legislative boundary drawings. The way that the census is going to affect this is potentially by silencing a large portion of Utah's population. And if that portion of the population goes silent in the drawing of their boundaries, then those voters aren't going to be able to have the same representation that they would have had they spoken up and had they been accounted for in the census demographic data. All right. Now, the biggest question that I've got and everybody had is how we can help. There's a new proposition on the ballot, and it's called Proposition 4. And the main idea of this is to allow for an independent commission to redraw the legislative boundaries of the state of Utah. And while not directly related to the census, it's going to have a huge effect in the future on how that census data is used. There's so many organizations around here. There's CCS, which I had the opportunity to work with. They're awesome. Comunidades Unidas, as well as Department of Workforce Services, IRC, Asian Association of Utah. These things fall off the trees. And it's up to us as students to embrace these opportunities. But finally, just keep an eye out for future exhibits, future activities that are put on by the city and by the state. I certainly will. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I had to go to this and that my teacher helped put this on and the light just turned off. So I'm going to let y'all go, but thanks so much for listening. This is Peter Johnson signing off.